Dear viewers, there it was, the blade of truth unsheathed, a test that could bind or sever. And for Michael Lawson, the coming days would hold the cruelest uncertainty of all. But before we continue our story, dear friends, take a moment, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and share in the comments where you're watching from. We love knowing which corner of the world our Voices of Reality family gathers from. Now let's see what happened next. That night, the sedan followed them home again. This time, its headlights lingered too long on Michael's house before fading into the dark. Michael stood at the window, jaw tight, as Gabriel whispered behind him, "If the test proves I'm his, what happens then?" Michael turned, unable to answer. Clara wept silently in the corner, and above them all the question burned. When the blood speaks, will it save them or destroy them? Ashford held its breath in those days. Morning fog laid low over lawns. Porch lights flicked on earlier, as if the town itself wanted the dark kept at bay. Michael rose before dawn, brewed coffee in silence, and listened, always listened, for the idling of a car that stayed too long. The black sedan came and went. Sometimes it only drifted past the house like a shark tracing a shoreline. Once, Michael found a single screw set upright on his driveway. A small, petty threat meant to pierce a tire and a man's peace. Inside, life forced itself into routines. Gabriel ate when food appeared and retreated when voices rose. He sat at the table with his math homework, pencil moving quick and sure, the only thing in his world that made strict sense. Michael started leaving a stack of sandpaper and old 2x4s at the back porch, and one afternoon he found the boy there, working at a stubborn knot until the face of the board showed smooth. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. A language formed between them in the scrape, scrape, scrape of effort. Clara moved like a person in a room she had memorized and no longer trusted. She flinched at knocks, watched windows, read and reread a small notebook she kept hidden in her purse. When Gabriel slept, she studied Michael's face with a grief he had no place to accept. Dear viewers, sometimes love returns not as flowers, but as vigilance. The extra lock turned, the porch light left on, the quiet cup of coffee pressed into a shaking hand. They drove to the county clinic on a Wednesday. The halls smelled of disinfectant and old carpet. A nurse with kind eyes led them to a small room painted a hopeful pale blue. Swabs, gloves, paper forms, always paper, always signatures that tied strangers to each other in ways the heart couldn't. Victor Crane was already there. He sat in the corner with his attorney, immaculate as ever, boredom on his face like an expensive cologne. When he saw Michael, the corner of his mouth lifted, amused, predatory. "This doesn't make you a father," Victor said softly, just for Michael. "It makes you a donor." Michael held his gaze without blinking. "We'll let the results speak." Victor smiled. "They will." The nurse swabbed cheeks. Michael watched the chain of custody tags, watched the envelope sealed, watched the forms double-checked. He saw the way Gabriel stiffened when the cotton touched his inner cheek, saw the boy's eyes cut to the door, calculating distance, time, escape. Michael placed his hand on the table, fingers open, palm down. "Stay. I'm here." Gabriel didn't look at him, but his shoulders dropped half an inch. "Results expedited," the nurse said. "Preliminary analysis within 48 hours. Full report next week." Victor's attorney smiled. The truth loves a deadline. That night the house was thin with quiet. Rain stitched at the windows. Michael sat in the armchair and studied the ceiling, the way you do when you can't look at your own thoughts head-on. Clara stood in the doorway a long while before she spoke. "There's something I didn't tell you," she said. Michael didn't move. "There's always something." She took the blow and continued. "If the test says Gabriel is yours, Victor won't let it rest. He will claim I falsified records. He will claim we tampered with the test. He will offer the judge what looks like proof." "What proof?" Michael asked, the word like gravel. Clara's mouth tightened. He keeps a log of everything he touches. People, money, tests. She hesitated. And he pays people to say what he needs. Michael breathed out slowly. Why are you telling me this now? Because, she said, if tomorrow brings good news, it will bring danger with it. And if it brings bad news, it will bring a different kind. She turned to go, then stopped. Michael, he looked up. If the blood says he isn't yours, she whispered, will you still stand for him? He tasted the bitterness that question carried and swallowed it whole. The blood doesn't decide whether a boy needs a home. Her face broke then, relief and sorrow and awe. Thank you, she said, and slipped back into the dark. Dear viewers, mercy has a sound. It is a tired man saying, I'll stand anyway. 2 days later, an email arrived for the court and the parties, stamped with a watermark and 8 disclaimers. Preliminary findings. Probability of paternity consistent with Michael Lawson at 99.4%. Final confirmation pending extended allele analysis. Clara pressed both hands to her mouth and sobbed. Michael sat down. The chair seemed to move beneath him. He read the lines twice. Numbers clean, sure, were suddenly a storm. He looked at Gabriel. The boy had no frame for this. Pride and terror wrestled in his eyes. Gabriel whispered, Does that mean? Michael nodded. It means we might be blood. Gabriel stared at the floor. Okay, he said, voice small, like a person who has found treasure and immediately buried it for fear someone will take it. Across town, Victor Crane poured himself an amber drink and smiled without humor. The courthouse was fuller this time. News traveled fast in Ashford. A preliminary number had leaked, by rumor or design, who could say, and people came to witness a man made or unmade by decimals. Judge Whitaker took the bench, gavel ringing once. His eyes were heavy-lidded, his displeasure habitual. We're here to address preliminary test results, he said, and to consider temporary custody pending a final report. Victor's attorney rose first. Slick voice, smooth hands. Your Honor, preliminary results are just that, preliminary. We have grave concerns regarding the integrity of the process. We move to exclude the preliminary findings from consideration at this time. Clara's public defender stood. Your Honor, the chain of custody was airtight. The court ordered the test, the clinic performed it, and the results, preliminary though they are, heavily indicate Mr. Lawson's paternity. The boy is safe with Mr. Lawson. He is not safe with Mr. Crane. The judge steepled his fingers. We'll hear your evidence of tampering, counselor. Victor's attorney smiled like a man laying a snare. Gladly. They called a lab courier to the stand. A young man named Terrence who looked more frightened than false. He testified that, after the clinic, the sealed envelopes were placed in a locked satchel. He signed them into the lab at 4:37 p.m. He left for a 15-minute break. When he returned, the satchel was in a different spot on the counter. Different how? The attorney said. Terrence swallowed. It was by the fridge instead of the sink. Did you examine the seals? Yes, they looked intact. Do you know this man? The attorney asked, holding up a photo. It was grainy, captured from a parking lot camera. A figure in a cap and work jacket near the lab door. Terrence hesitated. Looks like. Could be Mr. Lawson. A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Sharp, hungry. Michael's face went white. I was at home, he said loudly. I was at home with my... He cut the word off before family could betray itself. With them. Clara's lawyer sprang up. Objection. Unfounded. Prejudicial. Sustained, the judge said. But the poison had already been poured. The image hung in the room. A man in a cap. A door. A doubt. Victor leaned back, gaze on Michael like a man admiring a trap's workmanship. Dear viewers, truth can be strangled not by ropes, but by insinuation. A blurry photo can tie a knot a clean fact cannot. The defense tried to steady the ground. They brought the nurse. She detailed the seals, the tags, the signatures. They brought the clinic's chain of custody log. Every timestamp sang a tidy song. But Victor's lawyer wasn't after a symphony. He wanted static, noise enough to make certainty sound naive. He produced a notarized statement from a concerned citizen who claimed to have seen Clara at a payday loan office the week prior, speaking with a lab tech. He hinted, never said, only hinted, that money had changed hands. Clara stood so fast her chair shrieked. "That's a lie!" she cried. Tears burned her eyes. "I went in to wire money to get Gabriel's school records from out of state. I don't even know Mrs. Lawson," the judge said sharply. "Sit down." She sat, shaking. Michael stared at the table, seeing not wood grain but the shape of a battle he hadn't trained for. Smear, suggest, corrupt, repeat. Then, without warning, Gabriel stood. "Your Honor," he said, voice cracking but loud. "I want to say something." The judge stared at him over his glasses. "You're not represented here. Sit down." Gabriel didn't sit. He took a step forward, small and brave. "I don't want to go with him," he said, pointing at Victor with a hand that trembled. "I don't care about blood. He scares me. He scares my mom. The rest of it snagged in his throat and came out as air. Clara covered her mouth, sobbing. Michael half rose, as if to catch the boy's words before they fell. Victor's attorney smirked. "Your Honor, the boy has been coached." "Enough," Judge Whitaker snapped. He looked at Gabriel, and for a glinting second something like humanity flashed and then went cold. "This is not how we proceed." Gabriel sat hard, eyes blazing with a child's helpless fury. Judge Whitaker shuffled papers, the sound dry as husks. "Given the allegations of potential tampering, the visibility of this case, and the preliminary nature of the results," he said, "this court cannot rely on an expedited report. We will await the full analysis." Clara's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, with respect, where does the boy go tonight?" The judge's eyes settled on Michael, then on Victor, then finally on Gabriel. "Pending final results," Judge Whitaker said, voice clipped, "and in the interest of preventing flight or interference, the minor will be placed in temporary protective custody with the state." The room inhaled as one, then erupted. Gasps, shouts. The gavel hammered. Clara screamed, "No!" Michael felt the floor tilt. Two deputies moved forward. The bailiff called for order. "Dear viewers, there are moments when justice dresses in neutrality and feels like cruelty." Clara lunged as a deputy reached for Gabriel. "He's my son," she cried. "Please, please don't." Michael stepped between them, not to fight but to stand with. "Let me walk him," he said, voice tight. "Please." The judge hesitated, then nodded once. 2 minutes. The hallway outside the courtroom was cool and echoing. Fluorescent lights hummed. Michael walked beside Gabriel, a deputy at each shoulder. The boy's breath came fast, shallow. "I won't go with him," Gabriel said. "I won't." "You're not," Michael said. "You're going with the state. It's temporary." Gabriel swallowed hard. Temporary turns to always. "Look at me," Michael said. The boy lifted his eyes. "I am not done," Michael said, each word a plank he laid in a river. "Do you hear me? I will not stop. I will be at every door they put between us. When you need to sleep, remember that." Gabriel's mouth tightened. He nodded. "Okay." They reached the exit. A patrol car idled, light bar dead, engine purring. The deputy opened the back door. Gabriel paused, then turned back. For the first time, the word left him like a decision made inside a heart that had never given an inch. "Dad." Michael's throat closed. He nodded once, hard. "Yeah." Gabriel climbed in. The door shut with the soft, terrible finality of a choice you didn't get to make. The car pulled away. Through the glass, a small palm lifted, pressed against the window. Michael pressed his own hand to the air, as if skin could meet skin across state glass and courthouse orders. Clara folded, grief taking her legs. Michael caught her before she hit the floor. They sat on the courthouse steps as the day thinned toward evening. Reporters hovered and then, seeing the rawness on Michael's face, drifted back like gulls denied a scrap. Clara's voice was a thread. "He called you Dad." "I heard," Michael said. "It hurt to say it. It hurt not to. We're getting him back." "How?" she whispered. "They'll drag this out. Victor will pay and pay until the law speaks his name." Michael stared at the horizon, the line where gray sky met gray buildings. "Then we'll speak louder," he said. "With facts, with people who knew, with receipts, with whoever Victor forgot to buy." Clara shook her head. "He doesn't forget. Everyone forgets something," Michael said. "Even wolves." She turned her face toward him, eyes torn open by loss and by the fragile root of hope. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "After everything I did to you, why?" He looked at her a long time, then answered not with a speech but with a sentence sturdy enough to carry 4 lives. "Because the boy asked me to." Dear viewers, sometimes the holiest vows are the ones we make long after the paperwork is done. Ashford settled into a strange quiet that night. The black sedan didn't appear. The streetlights hummed over empty asphalt. Inside Michael's house, a bedroom stood neat and waiting. A chair still braced under a knob that didn't need guarding anymore. On the table lay a printout, 99.4%, a number that held promise in one hand and peril in the other. And somewhere in a state facility with linoleum floors and rules printed on posters, a boy pressed his palm to a window. He counted. He measured. He waited. Dear viewers, if you were in Michael's shoes, what would you do next? Knock on doors? Shake the halls of power? Or fall to your knees and ask the heavens to do what men could not? Share where you're watching from. Tell us your heart in the comments. And stay with us because the truth will not just knock. It will break the door wide open. The state facility wasn't built for comfort. It was built for control. The walls were beige. The air smelled of bleach, and the lights hummed too loudly. Gabriel sat on a thin mattress, knees pulled to his chest. The door to his room had no lock, no chair to brace against the knob. A guard passed every 30 minutes, shoes squeaking on linoleum. He hated it, hated the way the other boys looked at him like prey, hated the cafeteria food that tasted like cardboard. But most of all, he hated the silence after lights out, when whispers crawled across the dorm and he thought about the word he'd said out loud for the first time. Dad. He pressed his forehead to the cold wall. "Don't leave me," he whispered into the plaster. Back in Ashford, Michael sat at the kitchen table. The printout of the DNA results spread before him. 99.4%. Numbers that should have been enough. Clara paced the room like a caged bird. "We need more. We need proof of Victor's corruption. We need people who will speak." Michael shook his head. "We need time, and time is the one thing Victor buys best." Dear viewers, imagine standing at the edge of a fight with a man who bends the law like wet wire, while the child you're trying to protect sleeps in a bed meant for cast-offs. Could you bear it? Could you hold steady? Michael could. He had to. At Sunday service, the whispers still swirled, but one voice broke through them. Pastor Daniels, a man with white hair and hands that shook slightly as he held the Bible, pulled Michael aside. "Son," he said softly, "I know what the town is saying, but I also know what I've seen. You're steady, always have been. If that boy is yours, or even if he isn't, you'll do right by him." Michael swallowed hard. "I don't know how much right I can do if the law is stacked against us." The pastor's eyes glinted. "Then you don't fight alone. Talk to Sheriff Hill. He's seen Victor's men sniffing around this county for years. He knows where the rot is." Michael nodded slowly. Hope, faint but real, flickered. Sheriff Hill was a grizzled man with a limp and eyes that had seen too much. He listened as Michael laid out the story. When Michael finished, The sheriff leaned back. Victor Crane is poison. I've had 3 investigations into him. Everyone died on some judge's desk. You think he just buys lawyers? No, he buys fear. He buys silence. Then what do I do? Michael asked. The sheriff's gaze sharpened. Find the one thing he can't bury. Paper trail. Witness who won't fold. Something so loud even his money can't muffle it. He paused. And Lawson, watch your back. Men who circle your house don't do it for show. They're waiting for you to slip. That night, Clara sat on the couch, staring at the floor. Michael. There's more. Michael groaned. Always more. She nodded, tears streaking. Victor kept files on everyone close to him. Blackmail, insurance, and I helped him once. I delivered documents. I didn't know what they were until it was too late. Michael's stomach churned. So you've been part of this? Yes, she whispered. And if those files ever come to light, they'll prove what he is. But they'll also show my part in it. Michael stared at her. You're asking me to save you and Gabriel while knowing you fed the wolf. Her silence was answer enough. Dear viewers, sometimes love and rage sit in the same chair, and sometimes the person you want to protect is the very one who lit the fire at your door. The court set the next hearing for Monday. By then, the full DNA analysis would be ready. Michael felt every day stretch like a rope pulled taut. He visited Gabriel in custody. The boy's face lit for a moment, then shut down as if he didn't dare feel too much. They treating you all right? Michael asked. Gabriel shrugged. I've had worse. Michael leaned close. You're coming home. Hear me? Whatever that paper says, you're coming home. Gabriel's eyes flickered. And if it says I'm not yours? Michael didn't hesitate. Then I'll stand taller. Gabriel's jaw tightened, but his eyes shone. Okay. Saturday morning, the Ashford Gazette hit doorsteps with a front-page headline. Victor Crane. Ashford father or fraud? The article detailed whispers of corruption, hinted at sealed court records, and, most damning, published the preliminary DNA probability. Victor's camp exploded. His lawyer filed motions for contempt, accusing Clara of leaking documents. Reporters swarmed the courthouse steps, shouting questions about paternity, custody, corruption. Michael kept his head down, but Clara's face betrayed panic. It wasn't me, she whispered. I swear it. Michael wasn't sure. That evening, as Michael drove home, headlights flared in his rearview mirror. A black SUV tailed him down the country road. When he slowed, it slowed. When he pulled over, it stopped 50 yards back. Michael gripped the wheel, fury and fear colliding. Finally, the SUV turned, vanishing into the dark. He reached home to find Clara trembling. A man came by, said if you don't back down, accidents happen. Michael stared at her, then at the empty chair where Gabriel should have been. Let him try, he muttered. Dear viewers, the line between truth and terror was narrowing. A boy in custody, a father in doubt, a mother with secrets, and a predator whose reach spread like smoke. The courthouse doors would open soon, and when they did, blood, lies, and justice would all compete for the loudest voice. Monday morning, the Ashford courthouse overflowed. Reporters, neighbors, strangers from neighboring counties. They all came to witness whether Gabriel would be claimed or cast away. Michael walked in wearing the same suit he had worn to his father's funeral, dark, sober, a weight of history in its threads. Clara walked beside him, pale but composed. And Gabriel walked between them, jaw set, eyes down, trying to hide the tremor in his hands. At the front sat Victor Crane, immaculate, untouchable. His lawyer adjusted papers, confidence radiating. To them, this was a game already won. But, dear viewers, the game was about to shift. Judge Whitaker called the session to order. We have received the final analysis of the DNA test. Counsel, approach. The clerk handed the judge a sealed envelope. Whitaker slid it open with deliberate slowness, eyes skimming the page. The courtroom held its breath. Finally, the judge spoke. The probability of paternity between Michael Lawson and Gabriel Jensen is 99.97%. Statistically conclusive. The room erupted. Gasps, murmurs, flashes of cameras. Clara's hands flew to her mouth, tears streaming. Gabriel's head snapped up, eyes wide, disbelief and hope crashing together. Michael closed his eyes, steadying himself, the word son taking root in his chest. Victor sat perfectly still, only the faintest twitch at his jaw betraying him. Victor's lawyer rose instantly, voice sharp. Your Honor, while we do not dispute the science, we do dispute the chain of custody. We contend this test is the result of manipulation. My client asserts that Michael Lawson is not the biological father, despite what the paper says. The judge raised a brow. Are you accusing the state laboratory of fraud? Not fraud, Your Honor. Coercion. We intend to present evidence that Ms. Clara Lawson and Mr. Lawson colluded to alter records. Furthermore, the lawyer turned, gesturing at Gabriel. This child has spent 14 years under the influence of instability and deceit. Biological connection alone does not erase years of neglect. Murmurs rippled again. Clara's lawyer shot to his feet, furious. Your Honor, this is outrageous. But Victor himself rose, silencing the room with his presence. His voice was low, calm, terrifyingly confident. Judge Whitaker, he said, I am prepared to testify under oath that Gabriel is my son, and I will provide documentation, photos, records, receipts, that prove my relationship with Clara during the time of his conception. The room gasped. Clara's body crumpled as if struck. Clara was called next. The prosecutor's questions cut like knives. Mrs. Lawson, were you involved with Mr. Crane during your marriage to Mr. Lawson? She hesitated, tears spilling. Yes. The courtroom buzzed, scandal rolling like thunder. Did you conceal this from your husband? Yes, she whispered. Michael's chest burned, humiliation raw and public. The whispers of Ashford rose. She betrayed him twice. She brought shame to his door. But Clara raised her head at last, voice steady. I did what I thought would keep my family safe. Victor Crane was not protection, he was a cage. And if you give him custody, you are locking Gabriel in it forever. Just as the tension peaked, the doors at the back of the courtroom creaked open. A tall figure entered. A woman in her 40s, sharp suit, eyes alert. She strode forward and whispered something to Clara's lawyer. The judge frowned. Who is this? The lawyer cleared his throat. Your Honor, this is Detective Sloan, formerly of Nashville PD. She has relevant testimony concerning Mr. Crane. Victor's jaw tightened for the first time. The judge allowed it. Proceed. Detective Sloan took the stand, her voice firm. I investigated Victor Crane for over 3 years. Fraud, racketeering, extortion. Every case collapsed under pressure. Witnesses recanted, judges recused, evidence vanished. But one file remained, a file with Clara Jensen's name in it. Clara's face went pale. Detective Sloan continued. Victor used her as a courier. He blackmailed her into delivering sensitive documents. And in those documents, he detailed his intent to claim any child of hers as leverage, regardless of blood. The courtroom exploded. Gasps, shouts, whispers. Victor's lawyer jumped up. Objection. Hearsay. The judge pounded the gavel. Order. Detective Sloan, do you have proof? She held up a folder. Copies. Originals were destroyed, but these survived. And they show Victor Crane's hand. As murmurs rippled, Gabriel stood. Your Honor, he said, his voice shaking but loud. I don't care what blood says. I don't want to go with him. He scares me. He always has. The boy's words hung heavy. Silence fell. Judge Whitaker adjusted his glasses, studying the boy, then Victor, then Michael. The tension coiled tight. Dear viewers, truth had entered the room. Not clean, not simple, but jagged, carried by a boy's trembling voice and a detective's hidden file. But Victor Crane was not a man who surrendered, and his next move would shake the courthouse to its foundations. Detective Sloane's testimony had cracked Victor's mask for a moment, but predators do not retreat, dear viewers. They strike back harder. Victor leaned to his attorney, whispered something, and within minutes the lawyer rose with the confidence of a man holding a loaded weapon. Your Honor, he said smoothly, if the court is going to allow so-called evidence of Mr. Crane's alleged dealings, then the defense requests to present its own witness, one who can speak directly to Mr. Lawson's character. The judge arched a brow. Proceed. The double doors opened again. And this time, the figure who entered made Michael's blood run cold. It was Samuel Briggs, Michael's old friend, once his co-worker at the construction firm, once the man he trusted like a brother. But Samuel's face was tight, pale, and his eyes slid away from Michael's. Mr. Briggs, the lawyer said, tell the court about Michael Lawson's reputation. Samuel cleared his throat, voice trembling just enough to sound earnest. Michael's a good man, always was, but he has a temper. Michael's chest tightened. A temper? Samuel continued. There were times on the job he'd lose it. Throw tools, scream at men, once even punched a wall so hard his hands split. He's strong, Your Honor. Too strong when he's angry. I worried what would happen if he ever turned that on someone at home. The room gasped. Clara shot to her feet. That's a lie. The judge banged his gavel. Order. Michael rose, fists trembling at his sides. Your Honor, I've known Samuel since we were kids. He's twisting half-truths into poison. Yes, I broke my hand once. After my father died, I put it through a wall instead of through myself. And that's the truth. But the damage was done. The whispers started immediately. Maybe he isn't so steady after all. If he's got a temper, that boy doesn't need another unstable man. Michael sat slowly, every eye burning him alive. Dear viewers, sometimes it takes years to build a name, and only one false word to stain it. Victor's lawyer pressed harder. So we have a man with a history of violence, a woman with a history of deceit, and a child caught in the middle. Your Honor, is this what passes for stability? Is this what the court should endorse? Clara's lawyer tried to object, but the tide in the room had shifted. Even the judge's frown seemed heavier on Michael now. Michael clenched his fists under the table, fury warring with despair. This is what Victor does, he realized. He buys silence, he bends truth, and when he cannot, he manufactures lies. By evening, the diner in Ashford buzzed with talk. Did you hear? Michael Lawson's got a temper. Always knew he carried too much anger under that quiet face. If he's unstable, maybe the boy is better with Victor. The same people who once praised his steadiness now cast shadows across his name. Michael felt their stares when he stopped for gas, when he walked into the store. Whispers followed him like a second shadow. Clara gripped his arm. Ignore them. But how, dear viewers, do you ignore when your own community sharpens the knife against your back? That night, Gabriel sat across from Michael in the visitor's room of the facility. His voice was low. Is it true? Michael's heart ached. Is what true? That you lose control? That you get angry? Michael took a long breath. Yes, I get angry, but anger doesn't make me dangerous. Son, I would rather break every bone in my body than ever lay a hand on you. Gabriel studied him, eyes uncertain. Victor says, strong men keep control. He says men who can't. Michael leaned forward, voice sharp. Victor says what serves Victor. Don't you believe him? Don't believe a man who uses fear as his voice. For a long moment, silence hung. Then Gabriel nodded, just slightly. Back in court the next day, Detective Sloane requested to testify again. She produced a document. a transcript of recorded conversations between Victor and his associates. In one, Victor's voice was clear. "Everyone has a weakness. Lawson's is his pride. I'll drag him through the mud until the town sees him as unstable. Then the boy will be mine." The courtroom gasped. Victor's lawyer leapt up. "This is inadmissible. It's an illegally obtained recording." The judge's eyes narrowed. "Perhaps, but it speaks volumes to motive. Proceed carefully, counselor." Michael felt air return to his lungs. For the first time, Victor looked rattled. Clara rose to speak, tears wet on her cheeks. "Your Honor, I left Michael years ago because I was weak, because I believed men like Victor could give me more. I was wrong, dead wrong. Michael was always steady, always honorable. He raised himself from grief, cared for his family, and even when I shattered him, he never spoke against me. If you want to know who deserves Gabriel, look at who shows up. Look at who never leaves, even when every reason says he should." The room hushed. Michael bowed his head, her words a strange balm on wounds too old to name. Dear viewers, the scales of justice swung wildly that day, lies against truths, shadows against light. But the fight was not over. For Victor Crane still had one card left to play, and when he laid it down, the entire town would gasp. By the third day of testimony, the courthouse felt like a living thing, breathing, waiting, hungry. Reporters clustered at the back like crows. Townsfolk clutched pews, equal parts scandal and prayer. Michael sat with hands folded so tightly his knuckles blanched. Clara's eyes were rimmed with sleepless red. Detective Sloan studied the room the way a firefighter studies smoke. Victor Crane looked amused. Dear viewers, wolves smile before they move. Judge Whitaker rapped the gavel. Counsel, you may proceed. Victor's attorney stood. Your Honor, in light of the court's appetite for context, the petitioner submits Exhibit V, a notarized guardianship agreement signed by Mrs. Clara Jensen on August 12, 14 years ago, granting my client temporary custodial rights over the minor, Gabriel. Additionally, Exhibit V2, a sworn affidavit from the same date in which Mrs. Jensen states, under penalty of perjury, that Michael Lawson is not the father. The room detonated, gasps, a woman's sharp cry, the pop of a camera flash. Clara leapt to her feet, as if yanked by a string. That's a lie. Her voice broke. I never. The attorney held the papers high. Notarized, witnessed, and filed in Davidson County. He cooed. Perhaps our Nashville detective can confirm the office seal. Sloan leaned forward, eyes narrowed. Michael looked at the date and felt the floor tilt. August 12th, the month Clara disappeared from Ashford for 3 days. His mind went hunting through old shadows. The silence, the unanswered calls, the lie that she was helping a friend in Nashville. He had believed it because belief cost less than suspicion. Bring them here, Judge Whitaker said curtly. The clerk carried the papers to the bench. The judge studied the embossed seal, the looping, familiar curves of Clara's signature. He looked over his glasses. Mrs. Lawson, is this your hand? Clara swallowed hard. Tears spilled, hot and useless. It looks like my signature, she whispered. But Victor, answer the question, the judge snapped. Clara's chin trembled. Yes, it looks like mine. The room exhaled in a hiss. Got her. Michael stared at his own reflection in the polished table, a warped face on a dark surface. Lord, he thought without words, what did she sign? And what did he hold over her to make her do it? Victor's attorney paced, savoring the taste of the room. Your Honor, you've heard the boy's fear, the detective's uncorroborated allegations, the town's sympathies. But the law requires more than feelings. It requires paper. It requires the past as documented. And the past says this: Gabriel has long been within Mr. Crane's legal orbit. Mrs. Lawson admitted her affair. She admitted leaving Mr. Lawson. She admitted this signature. The preliminary DNA was tainted by compromised chain of custody. The final DNA, while impressive, cannot erase a sworn affidavit disavowing Mr. Lawson's paternity at the time of birth. We move, therefore, for immediate emergency transfer of the minor from state custody into Mr. Crane's supervised care, pending final disposition. He rested his palms on the table, smiling the way a man smiles when he sees a trap shut. Clara sagged, as if a string inside her finally snapped. Whispering to no one and everyone, she said, "He told me if I didn't sign, he'd make sure the baby never saw sunlight. He said if I signed, he'd keep us safe until I came to my senses." I thought it bought time. Michael's jaw clenched. "Why didn't you tell me?" he rasped. "Because I was drowning," she choked. "And shame is a stone." Detective Sloan rose without asking. "Your Honor, the exhibits Mr. Crane provided are real. I won't pretend otherwise. The notary stamp belonged to Carolyn Dade of Nashville, an associate of a man Crane paid to smooth things, judge calendars, clerks, notaries. Ms. Dade died 6 years ago, but before she did, she gave a statement, sealed in a different case, detailing a set of guardianships she processed under duress. I can't unseal it without authorization, but I can testify that her handwriting matches the witness line here, and that she told investigators she notarized forms with signatures placed in front of her by men who brought guns to her office. Sloane's gaze cut like wire. "That's your context." Victor's lawyer smirked. "A ghost story. Then let's call the living." Sloane shot back. She held up her phone. "Your Honor, with the court's permission, I can patch in Ms. Dade's former assistant, who left 2 voicemails this morning after the Gazette story. She says she remembers Clara Jensen. She says she remembers a woman crying in a chair while a man in a suit stood in the doorway and counted to 10. A murmur swept the room, like wind finding a crack. Judge Whitaker hesitated, then gestured. "You'll submit a sworn statement by end of day, Detective. For now, the phone stays off. This is not radio." Sloane's jaw tightened. "Yes, Your Honor." Michael felt it, the scales fluttering, indecisive. Paper against paper. Memory against seal. Victor's mouth curled. "Very well," he said softly. "If the court prefers the living, allow me to present Exhibit W." He nodded to an aide who wheeled in a cart with a small monitor. On the screen, a grainy security video played, time-stamped from 2 weeks earlier. A man in a cap and work jacket approached a side door at the state lab. He punched a code, slipped inside. The camera caught only sketches of a jawline, the angle of shoulders, the way he moved, efficient, sure. The attorney froze the frame. The courier, Terrence, testifies he took a 15-minute break. During that window, this man entered. We've enhanced the clip. Another overlay slid on, contrast sharpened, edges cleaner. The jawline resolved into familiarity. A sick sound rolled through the gallery. It looked like Michael. Clara whispered, "No," so softly it was almost breath. Michael stood, chest burning. "That's not me." Victor's attorney lifted a brow. "And yet," Detective Sloan rose, voice like a cut. "The angle is wrong, the gate's wrong, and the timestamp is embedded without cryptographic signature. In plain English, someone cloned the time bar. Without raw footage, this is theater." Victor's smile never wavered. "Then subpoena the raw footage," he purred. "From a private lab that, sadly, suffered a server crash last week. Convenient, devastating. Dear viewers, truth was being strangled, one doctored image at a time." Judge Whitaker rubbed his temples, the weight of a county on his brow. He looked at Michael long, as if searching for the boy he remembered in the man before him. Then he looked at Clara, the signature. At Gabriel, thin, shaking, a kid learning the vocabulary of courts too soon. His voice was flat. "This court will not transfer custody to Mr. Crane tonight." A collective breath, hope began to form. "But," he continued, "nor will I return the child to the Lawsons until these questions are resolved." The minor remains in state protective custody. Detective Sloan will submit her sworn statements by 5 p.m. Mr. Crane's exhibits will be authenticated by an independent clerk. We reconvene in 48 hours. The gavel fell. Relief and despair crashed together like waves in a narrow cove. Victor's lawyer frowned. This was not the immediate prize. Victor himself merely smiled, like a man who doesn't mind a longer hunt. The hallway outside the courtroom seethed with reporters. Questions came sharp as gravel. Mr. Lawson, did you tamper with evidence? Mrs. Lawson, did you sign away your child? Detective, are you fabricating leads? Michael pushed through, shielding Clara with his shoulder. Sloan carved a path with a look that said, "Try me." At the stairwell, Samuel Briggs waited, eyes bloodshot, face ashen. He reached for Michael's sleeve. "I lied," Samuel blurted. "About your temper. Victor's man came to my shop. He said if I didn't say you were unstable, my cousin would have trouble at her bar. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Michael stared, a dozen responses fighting to the surface. He heard only one thing that mattered. "Come say that under oath." Samuel nodded, swallowing shame. "I will." Clara steadied herself on the railing. "We have a chance," she whispered, almost not believing it. Sloane's phone buzzed. She checked it, eyes sharpening. "I've got something." Ms. Dade's assistant texted a photo of the notary ledger. August 12th line looks altered. If the ink is layered, a lab can prove it. "Can we trust the lab?" Michael asked, bleak. Sloane's mouth thinned. "We won't use the same one twice." They reached the parking lot under a sky the color of wet slate. The black sedan idled across the street. Michael felt the eyes before he saw the faces. Two men in the front, indistinct, the kind of indistinct that is a skill. "Get in," Michael said, steering Clara toward his truck. Sloane peeled off to her unmarked car, already calling someone, already 2 steps ahead. As Michael turned the ignition, his phone vibrated. A known number. A text. "If the law won't give me my son, I'll take him back the way the world taught me, by force." Before the fear could fully form, sirens flared down Maple. 3 squad cars screamed past them. Clara clutched the dash. "Where are they going?" she asked, voice thin. Michael's gut knew before his mind admitted it. The facility. He floored it. Blue and red lights painted the low concrete building in a nightmare's palette. Officers clustered around shattered glass. One dorm window blown out, curtain flapping like a torn flag. A terrified supervisor tried to answer too many questions with too few words. Michael jumped from the truck, shouldered past a deputy. "Where is he? Where's Gabriel?" A hand on his chest, Sheriff Hill. "Lawson, where is he?" Michael roared. The sound ripped from something primal. The sheriff's eyes, always tired, were haunted now. "Gone," he said. They hit the cameras first. 2 men. In and out in 90 seconds. The boy was taken. Clara made a sound Michael had never heard from a human throat. Like fabric tearing. Like the last string on a violin snapping. Dear viewers, there is a silence that follows catastrophe. The kind where even sirens seem far away. Michael's breath stuttered. His world narrowed to a pinpoint. Then it widened with a sudden, killing clarity. He turned to the sheriff. "Roadblocks," he said. "Every exit. Crane favors the highway but hides the first 10 miles on back roads." Sloan appeared at his shoulder, phone already to her ear. "APB is out. I want every plate reader from here to Nashville hot. He's arrogant. He'll use his own network, and networks leave tracks." Clara gripped Michael's sleeve. "Please," she whispered. "Please bring him back." Michael looked at her. A woman he had loved, lost, and somehow found again in a storm, and then at the broken window. He felt his father's calloused hands in his bones, his mother's steadiness in his spine. He nodded once. "I'm not asking permission," he said. "I'm going." Sheriff Hill held his gaze, then tossed him a spare radio. Channel 3. Don't be a hero. Michael caught it. I don't have the luxury. They split. Sloan in the lead, Michael behind. Clara with the sheriff out of sheer insistence and terror. Tires bit wet blacktop. The town fell away to two-lane roads lined with fields silvered by moonlight. Every mailbox felt like a watcher, every curve like a question. Sloan's voice cracked through the radio. Plate reader ping. Black SUV took County 9, cut south on Bramble. That's wrong if you're heading for the interstate. Back road to the quarry, Sheriff Hill answered. Old service road still passable. Michael's fingers tightened on the wheel. He remembered the quarry, the way kids dared each other to climb its rusted fence, the way sound fell strange in its bowl. Another ping. Thermal camera at Miller's grain silo just flagged 2 heat signatures in an SUV, Sloan said. Holding pattern near the tree line. Michael's jaw set. He's staging. Or waiting, the sheriff said grimly. Waiting for a switch. They found the turn by memory, not signs. An old logging path, ruts filled with rainwater, branches clawing at paint. Michael killed his lights 100 yards out. The night pressed in, smelling of wet pine and machine oil. Dear viewers, some roads feel like choices, others feel like fate. Through the trees, a shape idled dark, patient. Voices carried faintly, the kind of low men's voices get when they think the night belongs to them. Michael moved first, keeping to the shadows, every step placed, every breath measured. Sloan ghosted to the other flank, radio whispering. The sheriff came up the middle, a silhouette thick with consequence. A door opened, a smaller shape struggled. Michael knew that posture, shoulders coiled, chin set, before his mind could say the name. Gabriel. Now, Sloan hissed. Lights exploded, strobes carving the woods into stark bone and ink. Sheriff's department. Hands where I can see them. Chaos. A shout. The SUV reversed hard, fishtailed, slammed a stump. One man bolted toward the trees. Another grabbed Gabriel, yanking him like cargo. Michael didn't think. He moved. The world collapsed to a tunnel. Gabriel's arm, a man's wrist, Michael's hands. He hit the man low and mean, training replaced by rage forged into aim. They went down in the mud, a tangle of limbs, the smell of gasoline sharp. Let him go, Michael roared. The man snarled, tried to reach his waistband. Sloan's voice cracked like a whip. Don't. A red dot bloomed on the man's chest. He froze. Gabriel twisted free, stumbled, then launched himself at Michael with a force that almost knocked them both down again. Dad, he gasped, the word broken and perfect. Michael crushed the boy to him. For a second, the world was only that breath, heartbeat, the human proof of a prayer. Hands, the sheriff barked. The second man, running for the dark, vanished into the trees. A shot cracked, warning, not kill. The woods swallowed him anyway. The detained man lifted his palms, eyes flat. You just bought yourself a war, he muttered. Sloan cuffed him, voice calm. I was born in one. They brought Gabriel back under a sky going from iron to ash, the thin edge of morning sharpening the world. In the flashing lights, Clara folded her son into her arms, sobbing out apologies and names and the simple animal sound of relief. Victor Crane did not appear, but his shadow stretched long, the forged past, the doctored tape, the men who ran when the law turned on its siren. Dear viewers, the truth did not knock tonight. It broke the door. A boy was stolen and snatched back. A father answered without waiting for permission. A mother's shame began to loosen its grip. But justice, real justice, still waited at the courthouse. Papers still lay on the judge's desk. And Victor still had money, friends, and a map of the county burned into his bones. If you were in Michael's shoes, what would you do now? Rally the town? Drag every secret into daylight? Or take the fight to the places where men like Victor count on no one looking? Tell us where you're watching from dear viewers, and hold your breath with us because the gavel will finally fall. On truth, on power, on the kind of love that stands even when it's bleeding. Ashford woke to headlines and sirens. Boy kidnapped, recovered in quarry standoff. The Gazette printed Michael's photo, mud on his shirt, Gabriel clutched in his arms. The picture spread across social media faster than truth could chase rumor. Some called him a hero. Others whispered about vigilantes, about temper and recklessness. Michael didn't care. He sat at the kitchen table, Gabriel asleep upstairs, Clara watching him like a man she was only just beginning to recognize again. He whispered into the silence, "I won't let them take him again." Dear viewers, when a man is pushed past the edge, he stops waiting for rescue. He becomes it. 2 days later, the courthouse brimmed with tension. Deputies flanked the doors. Reporters jostled for a glimpse. Judge Whitaker's gavel cracked the air. Order. We resume proceedings in the matter of custody and paternity of Gabriel Jensen. Victor Crane sat smugly, his cufflinks catching the light. His lawyer stacked files like ammunition. Michael straightened his tie, feeling every eye on him. Sloane slid into the bench behind, her presence like steel at his back. Clara folded trembling hands in her lap. Gabriel sat between them, face pale but jaw set. The judge began. The events of the past 48 hours are extraordinary. An attempted abduction, armed suspects, one in custody. This court will consider the implications carefully. Detective Sloane rose, holding up a folder. Your Honor, we submit forensic analysis of the Davidson County Notary Ledger from August 12th. The ink used for Clara Jensen's alleged guardianship affidavit is chemically distinct from the surrounding entries. Translation: it was added later, forged under duress. The witness line bears pressure indentations consistent with a signature placed over tracing paper. She passed the report forward. The judge scanned, frowning. Independent lab? Yes. Chain of custody verified. No ties to Crane. Victor's lawyer scoffed. A convenient narrative. One woman's word, one chemist's ink bottle. Sloane's gaze didn't waver. Or the truth, written in the very molecules of the page. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Then Clara's lawyer called Samuel Briggs. Michael's old friend stepped nervously to the stand, sweat at his temples. Mr. Briggs, the defender said, you testified last week regarding Mr. Lawson's temper. Do you stand by that testimony? Samuel's voice cracked. No, I lied. I was pressured by associates of Victor Crane. They said if I didn't smear Michael, my cousin's bar would be burned down. Couldn't risk her. But it wasn't true. Michael has never been a danger to anyone. He's the most steadfast man I know. Gasped. The judge's gavel snapped down. Order. Michael closed his eyes, the taste of vindication bittersweet. Victor's lawyer smirked faintly, as though even a crack in his net was part of the game. Then the boy stood. Your Honor, Gabriel said, voice shaking but loud enough to carry. Can I talk? The judge hesitated. This is highly irregular. Sloane spoke from the bench. He's the one whose life is on trial, Your Honor. Let him speak. Whitaker sighed. 5 minutes. Gabriel stepped to the front. His hoodie sleeves hung too long, his sneakers scuffed. But his voice... Oh, dear viewers, his voice carried a weight no lawyer could script. I don't care about papers. I don't care about blood. I care about who shows up. Victor Crane scares me. He scared my mom. He treats people like tools. Michael Lawson, he came for me. He fought for me. He calls me son even when I'm not sure if I am. If you send me with Victor, you're telling me money matters more than love. And if that's what this court believes, then I'll never trust a word from it again. The gallery erupted in murmurs, some clapping hands over mouths, others nodding fiercely. Michael blinked fast, holding back the flood inside him. Clara wept openly. The judge banged the gavel. Order. but his voice shook. Victor rose smoothly. Your Honor, eloquent as the boy is, custody is not a talent show. It is law. And the law says I hold a notarized affidavit signed by his mother. The judge frowned. One now contested as forged. Victor's smile sharpened. Then allow me to submit Exhibit X, a sworn statement from a former colleague of Detective Sloan, alleging she fabricated evidence in a prior investigation. Gasps erupted again. Sloane's jaw clenched, but her face remained stone. Victor continued. You see, Your Honor, everyone here is desperate. The boy, the mother, the would-be father, even this detective. They weave stories. But I alone have documents, signatures, affidavits. He spread his hands. And money does not lie. Michael stood, voice ringing. Neither does blood. Dear viewers, truth and lies now battled not in shadows, but in the open courtroom. Blood against money, love against power. And as the gavel loomed, Victor Crane's empire of secrets prepared its most poisonous strike yet. The courtroom shifted when Victor's attorney waved Exhibit X. The gallery leaned forward, hungry for scandal. Judge Whitaker adjusted his glasses. Detective Sloan, he said. Step forward. Sloan rose, chin high. The lawyer read from the statement. Detective Cassandra Sloan, during her tenure in Nashville PD, was accused of fabricating witness notes in a fraud case involving a corporate entity later cleared of wrongdoing. Gasps again. Victor sat smug, hands folded. Detective, the judge pressed. Is there truth to this? Sloane's eyes never left Victor. No, Your Honor. Those notes were genuine. The witness recanted under pressure from the very same circles Crane ran in. The accusation was planted, and it worked. It killed the case. I lost my badge because I refused to retract. The judge studied her. So we have one accusation against another. Sloan leaned forward, voice steady. Not accusation, Your Honor, pattern. Every case tied to Crane rotted the same way. Witnesses vanished, judges recused, cops discredited. If you believe I lied then, you hand this boy to a man who built his empire on lies thicker than concrete. The gallery buzzed. Some nodded. Others whispered doubts. Michael felt the tide teeter. Michael's chest ached as he watched. Lies and half-truths tangled like weeds. Every defense felt swallowed by Victor's bottomless resources. Clara leaned close. Michael, we're losing him. Michael's eyes found Gabriel. Shoulders hunched, face blank, trying not to let fear show. Cut him deeper than any smear. How do you fight a man who owns the board, the pieces, and the referee? Michael thought. For a moment, despair clawed at him. But then he remembered the quarry. Gabriel's small hand clutching his shirt, voice cracking with one word. Dad. That memory steadied him like iron. Dear viewers, sometimes faith is not the absence of fear. It is the refusal to quit while afraid. Victor rose, voice smooth as silk. Your Honor, you see the desperation here. A disgraced detective, a scorned ex-wife, a man with a temper, all against me whose only crime is providing opportunity. I am not the villain. I am the victim of slander, envy, and a small-town suspicion. The words curled like smoke. Some in the gallery nodded. Others scowled. Whitaker tapped his gavel once. You speak well, Mr. Crane, but words are wind. Do you have proof? Victor smiled. Always. The defense called their final witness. The doors opened again, and a tall man in a gray suit entered, flanked by deputies. His face was familiar. Victor's right-hand enforcer, the one arrested at the quarry. The room went still. Your Honor, Victor's lawyer said, this is Mr. Alan Pike, a man who worked for my client for over a decade. He will confirm that all accusations of coercion are lies, that Mr. Crane's dealings were above board, and that the so-called kidnapping was nothing more than a misunderstanding gone violent. Gasped. Clara's face drained of color. But as Pike took the stand, something unexpected happened. He didn't look at Victor. He looked at Michael, then at Gabriel. His jaw clenched. The lawyer began. "Mr. Pike, tell the court, did Mr. Crane ever order you to intimidate or coerce Ms. Lawson?" Pike's voice was low. "Yes." The lawyer blinked. "Excuse me?" "Yes," Pike repeated louder. "Victor Crane ordered me to threaten her, to keep her quiet, to make her sign papers she didn't want to sign." The gallery erupted. Shouts, gasps, the crack of the judge's gavel. Victor shot to his feet. "You lying snake!" The judge banged his gavel. "Order! Mr. Crane, sit down." Pike continued, words spilling now, years of silence breaking. "He made me follow Lawson. He made me watch the boy. He said if Clara didn't play along, the boy would disappear into a system where names don't matter. He paid judges, clerks, cops. And yes, he staged the kidnapping at the facility." The courtroom roared. Clara sobbed. Gabriel's eyes went wide. Michael sat rigid, hardly breathing. Victor's lawyer stammered. "Your Honor, this man is in custody. His testimony is self-serving." Pike slammed his palm on the rail. "I've got records, ledgers, pay stubs, burner phones. I'm done carrying his sins. I'll show every file I kept." Victor's mask cracked at last. He surged up, shouting, "You traitor! You think they'll protect you? You think you'll live to hand over files? You're dead already." The deputies moved fast, restraining him. The gallery screamed. The judge pounded his gavel furiously. "Mr. Crane, another outburst and I'll have you removed from this court." But the damage was done. For the first time, Ashford saw Victor not as untouchable, but as dangerous, rabid, cornered. Michael exhaled, chest loosening. Gabriel leaned into him, trembling but alive. Dear viewers, the wolf had howled in daylight, his fangs bared for all to see. A man who bought silence now faced betrayal from within. But would Alan Pike's confession be enough to break chains of money and influence? Or would Victor Crane's empire strike back one final, desperate time? Deputies carried in a heavy box Alan Pike's stash, pulled from a storage locker Sloan had forced open with a warrant. Inside, ledgers, burner phones, envelopes stuffed with receipts. Years of Victor's dealings, ink and paper too stubborn to burn away. The prosecutor laid them out one by one. Payment to Judge Harlan, $15,000. Payment to Officer K. Dade, $4,000. Wire transfer for courier silencing, $7,500. Each line cut like a blade. The gallery buzzed like a hive split open. Clara gripped Michael's arm so tightly it hurt. Gabriel leaned forward, eyes sharp with something like vindication. Victor sat stone-faced, but his hand twitched against the table. On the stand, Pike's voice grew steadier the longer he spoke. "I worked for Crane 15 years. I kept ledgers because I knew one day he'd turn on me. He made me tail Clara. He made me scare her into signing. I stood by while he told her if she didn't obey, her boy would vanish." He glanced at Gabriel then, voice breaking. "Kid, I'm sorry. You were just a child. I let him use you as leverage. That's on me." Gabriel's lips pressed tight, but he nodded once. A boy's strange mercy in the face of betrayal. The judge frowned. "Mr. Pike, why confess now?" Pike sighed. "Because I saw Lawson fight like hell for a kid who might not even be his. Because I saw the boy call him Dad. And because I'm tired of rotting in silence while Crane walks free." Victor's lawyer sputtered. "Your Honor, this is a convicted criminal." But Sloan cut in, voice sharp. "Not yet. And everything in those ledgers crosschecks with financial records Crane filed under shell corporations. We verified half this morning. By tomorrow we'll have more." The judge's gavel fell. "Then we will admit the ledgers into evidence." The gallery erupted in cheers, whispers, shouts. Ashford had never seen such spectacle. Victor finally spoke, his calm unraveling. You think some notes and a coward's confession erase 14 years of loyalty? You think a boy's frightened testimony outweighs power? I built this county. I own it. Michael's voice rang out from his bench. Not anymore. Clara's lawyer called him forward. Michael rose slowly, every step heavy with years of silence and shame. He took the oath, then looked out over the room. Neighbors, strangers, reporters, all waiting. Mr. Lawson, the lawyer began. Why are you here? Michael's throat worked. He could have spoken of DNA, of affidavits, of forged signatures. Instead, he spoke from the marrow. I'm here because of a boy who never asked for any of this. A boy who has slept with his shoes on, ready to run. A boy who's learned to measure rooms instead of feeling safe in them. I don't care what the papers say. I don't care what blood says. What I care about is that when he called, I came. That when they took him, I went. That when he pressed his hand to a window, I pressed mine back. That's fatherhood. Not signatures, not chains, presence. The courtroom fell silent, hanging on every word. Michael's voice thickened. I'm not perfect. I've been angry. I've been broken. But I will not let him grow up believing love is a transaction. If the court can't see that, then it's not justice, it's just ink and money. But I'm not leaving him. Not ever. For a moment, no one breathed. Then a wave of murmurs, gasps, even muffled sobs rippled through the benches. Mrs. Thompson, the gossip queen of Ashford, wiped her eyes. That man's a father if I ever saw one, she whispered. Even Judge Whitaker blinked, his hand frozen over the gavel. Victor's face twisted, half fury, half fear. Clara rose next, unasked. Your Honor, she said, voice trembling but clear. I failed Michael once. I failed my son 100 times. But I am telling the truth now. I signed papers under threat. I ran when I should have stayed. But I came back because I couldn't carry the lie anymore. And if you take Gabriel from us, you will be giving him not stability, not safety, but a prison with velvet bars. Her words landed like stones on water, ripples spreading, sinking deep. Whitaker sat back, frowning, weighing years of habit against the raw force of testimony. Papers cluttered his desk, ledgers, affidavits, DNA results, accusations. But the words in the air now were heavier than the ink. He finally said, "This court will recess for 1 hour. I will review this evidence and return with a ruling." The gavel cracked. The room exploded in chatter. Deputies cleared benches. Reporters swarmed. In the hallway, Michael sagged against the wall. Clara touched his arm. Gabriel clutched his hoodie tight. Sloane stood guard like a sentinel. Then came the sound of polished shoes. Victor Crane approached, flanked by his lawyer, eyes burning. He stopped inches away, voice low. You think you've won? This isn't about courts. This is about power. And power doesn't care about truth. Michael stepped forward, eye to eye. Maybe not, but Gabriel does. And so does this town. They're done being afraid of you. Victor sneered, but for the first time, there was a flicker, small, sharp, of uncertainty. Dear viewers, sometimes victory doesn't come when the gavel falls. Sometimes it comes in the moment the wolf realizes the pack is no longer afraid. The hour ticked down. The town buzzed. The judge sat in chambers with papers spread wide. Michael prayed in silence. Clara wept quietly. Gabriel pressed his back to the wall like he could hold the building steady. And when the courtroom doors opened again, Ashford braced itself for a verdict that would echo far beyond its walls. The hour passed like a lifetime. When the gavel cracked once more, every soul in Ashford seemed to lean forward at once. Judge Whitaker adjusted his glasses, his face unreadable. Papers lay scattered before him. DNA results, Pike's ledgers, Clara's affidavit, Sloane's reports. The weight of it all pressed down like an iron bell. This court has reviewed the evidence, he began, voice heavy. We have seen documents, heard testimony, and witnessed the dangerous reach of Mr. Victor Crane. We have also seen extraordinary courage in the face of fear. The room hushed. Whitaker continued. The DNA test establishes Mr. Lawson as the biological father of Gabriel Jensen with near certainty. The testimony of Alan Pike, corroborated by ledgers, indicates a pattern of coercion and corruption by Mr. Crane. While Mrs. Lawson's past decisions cast long shadows, the evidence shows she acted under duress. Therefore, he paused. The gavel lifted. This court awards sole custody of Gabriel Jensen to Michael Lawson, with Clara Lawson as joint guardian. Mr. Victor Crane is hereby remanded into federal custody pending criminal investigation. The gallery burst like a dam. Shouts, sobs, claps. Clara collapsed into her seat, hands shaking as tears poured freely. Gabriel clutched Michael's arm, burying his face against him. Michael held him tight, jaw trembling, heart pounding. Sloane let out a slow breath, a warrior's relief. Victor erupted, surging to his feet. This is a farce. You can't cage me. You think ledgers and cowards can bury me? The deputies closed in, snapping cuffs around his wrists. Michael stood, meeting Victor's wild eyes. You're done. Victor spat. You think you won because of love? Love is weakness. Power endures. Michael leaned close, voice steady as bedrock. Then why are you the one in chains? The deputies dragged him out, his cufflinks clattering to the floor. Reporters swarmed the exit, cameras flashing as the great Victor Crane was led away like any other criminal. His empire of fear cracked in real time. Alan Pike, still in custody, bowed his head. For once, silence was his offering of penance. After court, the family stepped into the sunlight. Gabriel blinked hard against the glare. The town clustered at the steps, some cheering, some silent with awe, all watching. A reporter shoved a mic forward. Gabriel, do you feel safe now? Gabriel looked at Michael, then at Clara. He took a deep breath. Yeah, he said, because I know who my dad is, not just by blood, but by what he does. The words rippled like gospel through the crowd. Michael's throat tightened. Clara slipped her hand into Gabriel's. For once, he didn't pull away. That evening, the Lawson house was filled with a quiet it hadn't known in years. Not fear, peace. Gabriel's backpack lay by the door, shoes kicked off. Clara folded blankets without trembling. Michael sat in his old chair. Gabriel sprawled on the rug, scribbling math problems for fun. Clara whispered, "It feels like a home again." Michael nodded slowly. It always was. It just needed to be filled. They sat in silence, a family fragile but real. Later that night, Michael stood on the porch. The sky stretched wide, stars sharp against velvet dark. He thought of his father's steady hands, his mother's Bible, the jar under his bed once labeled my future. He thought of Gabriel's hand pressed to the glass, of the word Dad spoken like a lifeline. Dear viewers, sometimes destiny doesn't arrive with trumpets or prophecy. Sometimes it arrives in a boy's whisper, in a courtroom gavel, in a man deciding not to run. Dear viewers, what do we learn from Michael Lawson's story? That family is not written only in blood, but in sacrifice. That love is not fragile. It is fierce, unyielding, stronger than money or fear. That redemption is possible even for those who fall. And that when power and love collide, only one endures. Michael once believed his life was broken beyond repair. But through fire, betrayal, and trial, he learned a truth worth sharing. Power fades, money crumbles, but love chosen, lived, fought for remains. Dear viewers, if you were in Michael's shoes, what would you do? Would you forgive the one who broke you? Would you stand for a boy not yet sure he was yours? Would you risk your name, your peace, even your safety just to keep love alive? Reflect with me tonight, because these questions aren't only Michael's, they're ours. If the story touched you, share where you're watching from. And remember, every story is a mirror, Please subscribe to Voices of Reality for more stories like this.